Greetings, I'm Maya Gibbs, your Executive Safety Trainer here at Trinity. And keeping our staff and customers safe on a work site is our first priority. This site-specific training will cover some job site hazards that may be present on a work assignment and what we all can do to keep each other safe. Trinity's overview of job site hazards. What's going on in your workplace? Here are some hazards that might be present on a job site. You have chemical and dust hazards. This would include cleaning products, pesticides, asbestos, etc. You have biological hazards. These would include your mold, insect or pests, as well as communicable diseases. Next, you'll have ergonomic hazards. This includes repetition, lifting, even awkward postures. There's work organization hazards. These things will include your stressors at work. There are safety hazards, which include slips, trips, and falls, or even faulty equipment. And lastly, there's physical hazards, which is noise, temperature extremes, as well as radiation. This pyramid is the hierarchy of controls. At the very top, you have your engineering controls. In the middle is the administrative controls, including workplace practices. And lastly, you have your personal protective equipment. First, let's talk about the engineering controls. These controls are at the source. It limits the hazard but doesn't entirely remove it. Other examples of engineering controls are mechanical guards, wet methods for dust, enclosures, isolation, dilution ventilation. Also, here are some other examples that we will have for engineering controls. It will be proper chair equipment, redesigned tools, as well as the local exhaust at your work site. Next, we have the administrative controls. This is aimed at reducing employee exposure to hazards but not removing them. Such changes would include changes in work procedures, such as the written safety policies and rules, schedule changes such as lengthened or additional rest breaks, job rotation, as well as adjusting the work pace. Additionally, training with the goal of reducing the duration, frequency, and severity of exposure to the hazards. And last but not least, we have the PPE controls. PPE stands for Personal Protective Equipment. This is the control of last resort. All of our technicians are required to wear special clothing, eye protection, hearing protection, as well as respiratory protection. This control is geared toward our workers. Additionally, properly wearing your personal protective equipment will greatly reduce your risk of the numerous job site hazards that may pose a risk to your health and safety. Remember, our goal is to think safety first. Here at Trinity, we have site-specific trainings geared to meet the needs of all of our staff members. All trainings are approved and referenced by OSHA standards for general industry practices. My motto is simple: think safety at all times. Here at Trinity, we adhere to all standards and regulations given by OSHA. Our first regulation is access to employee exposure and medical records. These are your employee rights. This requires most employers with more than 10 workers to keep a log of all injuries and illnesses. Workers have the right to review the current log as well as the log stored for the past 5 years. Workers also have the right to view the annual posted summary of all the injuries and illnesses for Trinity. This is the OSHA 300 log. This is where we document all work-related injuries and illnesses and severity of each case. This annual summary shows totals of injuries and illnesses for the year in each category. This summary must be posted in a visible location from the months of February 1st through April 30th of each year. Next, we will discuss the access to exposure and medical records. Within the medical records, we will have questionnaires, results of examinations, laboratory tests, medical opinions and diagnoses, first aid records, as well as description of treatments. On the exposure record side, it will include environmental and biological monitoring. This will also include personal information as well as workplace information. Also included in these records is the material safety data sheets for all the chemicals that we use here at Trinity. As a part of OSHA standards, here at Trinity we have the Hazard Communication Program. This is to ensure that employers and employees know about work hazards and how to protect themselves so that the incidence of illnesses and injuries due to hazardous chemicals is reduced. Our Hazard Communication Programs folder is located in our Florida headquarters. We always use container labeling, and we always maintain a material safety data sheet for all the chemicals that we use. Next, we have the Bloodborne Pathogen Standard. The purpose is to prevent exposures at work due to blood and other bodily fluids. Here is Trinity's responsibilities to our staff: to identify workers at risk, ensure universal precautions are practiced, provide personal protective equipment, provide prompt evaluation and treatment, provide hepatitis B vaccination resources, record keeping, and training our workers annually. Next, we have the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, also known as the AHERA. Here at Trinity, we train for asbestos on an as-needed basis, so this will be geared toward our site-specific trainings. It provides training for technicians and maintenance staff in general awareness, and more extensive training for workers doing small jobs and/or emergency cleanups. These trainings cover state and local workers who perform asbestos work who aren't covered by OSHA. Here are your next steps. You have a homework assignment. In keeping with Trinity's compliance initiative and with a checklist, research what's going on in your workplace. Make sure to ask your immediate supervisor about the hazard communication. Talk a little bit about access to medical and exposure records. Have them explain about the bloodborne pathogens. And when given the opportune time, discuss more about the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act. We'll talk again soon.